Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
We sit here at an extraordinary time, 40-year retrospective. How do you feel about that?
Good. But it also cuts both ways, because if you have a certain momentum going, you don't want to look in the rearview mirror. You want to keep it going. And what a retrospective forces you to do is to reflect and size up and make connections you would not have made. On the other hand, this show enabled me to build 3 new works that are in this room, and that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have this retrospective. So
the demand of the retrospective made you produce these things that everybody's talking about, these 3 new works.
Yeah, because they said to me, very early on, Kurt Barnadotte asked me if I would do a retrospective in this museum before this museum was built. And I said, sure, Kurt, but you know, you've seen the recent work. How are we going to fit it into the room, and how are we going to have sufficient weight load? And he said, look, leave that to me. I'll take it upon myself to try to convince the powers that be, when they do the brief for the architectural competition, to make a weight load sufficient for your work and to make a door to the outside that'll enable you to crane pieces up and bring them in. And then Kurt unfortunately passed away. What happened was that Lowry,
Glenn Lowry,
yeah, picked up Kirk's suggestion and decided to go ahead with it. So when they built this floor, they built a door 40 feet wide, 13 feet high, which enabled me to build a platform with steel plate and cargo crates below, to then put 28 plates in the parking lot, and to, with a crane, hoist them up onto the platform, and then to dolly them in on skates and outriggers, and then set up gantries in here. And we moved in 550 tons in about 2.5 weeks. But it enabled me to build 3 pieces for this room. So these pieces were built exactly for this room. This room is shaped like an H. You have a central connecting kind of corridor between 2 large wings, and the pieces on the far ends are approximately, this one's 36 by 70 and that one's about 40 by 70, and these 2 pieces take up about 65 feet. And they're all about 12'9".
I want to talk about process of getting them in and mounting this kind of thing. But what did you learn when you look at all these pieces about connections you might not have seen before?
Okay, when I first started to work, in order to proceed, I wrote down a verb list just to enact certain processes, and not to think about sculpture, but to think about how would I involve myself in relation to matter in a way that will enable me to concentrate on the activity of making something. So I wrote down a simple verb list to cut, to fold, to curve, to bend, to prop, whatever. And then I started enacting those verbs in relation to given material, whether it was a piece of rubber, a piece of lead. And Phil Glass and myself, the composer, we would work together, and we would just take a given verb for a day, and with certain materials we would go through the processes of trying to form whatever we form. Most of the time they were just simple exercises in relation to process, and they didn't produce anything. But there's a piece upstairs, it's called To Lift. And I took a piece of rubber about maybe 12 feet long and about 4 feet wide, grabbed it in its center edge, and lifted it up. So it's vertical on its back edge, but it forms a continuous volume. So topologically speaking, there's no inside or outside of this form. If you look back now at this exhibition, 40 years in hindsight, you can see that that problem is full-blown in these pieces. In that piece like band here behind us is continuous inside and outside topologically. So in some sense, the to lift verb piece is the subtext for these larger pieces.
What surprises you most about this evolution to where we are today?
In my work, you mean?
Yeah.
I guess that I've been able to sustain work and be out of favor and come back in favor and go out of favor, and that that there's always been support for the work. When I first started working, there was an older generation of artists that really helped me and supported me. There was Leo Castelli, a dealer who I was $500,000 in debt to, who kept supporting me and building work for me. Then I think probably the main surprise was after the Tilted Art controversy, there was a lot of negativity coming my way, and then with the Torque to Lips pieces, there was a whole younger generation.
It changed everything.
That responded to the work in a way that I could not have foreseen, and that surprised me. It does surprise me that the work has found an audience. I mean, you know, you don't build work for effect or affect. You build work because you have a compulsion to work. You build work for a desired experience that's commensurate with what you want to project and you don't know. When you find that you touch other people, that's rewarding. I think that if work can act as a catalyst for thought, and it can change how people think, then it can possibly change how they see. Because in a way, to see is to think. And I think what happened with this work is because it's not mediated, because there's no representation, because you don't have an experience that's already downloaded before, when you go to these works, the experience is new. And because it's new and not mediated, even though everything's mediated to a degree, but because it's not mediated in terms of its representation, in terms of everything you've seen before, the experience remains vital and fresh, and it remains significantly different for everyone. Everyone has a personal, private experience with this work. So you don't really have to know the history of sculpture to understand this work. On some very basic level, to walk into and through and around and become the subject matter of your own experience is what this work offers.
Does that mean that this art has some kind of functionality?
Well, it has a function without being functionally useful. It has a function in that it makes the observer the subject of his own experience. If you take former work that is either casted or, say, modeled and put on a pedestal, usually that work has a representational theme or a subject matter or a definition of an event, if it's, say, a equestrian rider. In fact, equestrian riders have gone to the point where they've even had iconography built into the form. 2 legs up, died in battle, 1 leg up, wounded, 4 legs down, died in bed. So into figuration, there's always been a built-in depiction or signification. So you go to it to understand the subject matter or the academic realization of the theme being portrayed. That's the same as Cézanne's apples. You go in and you look at the apples and you understand either the weight or the gravity, but it's a still life. So you're dealing with a depiction in a frame. Here, that's reversed. You're the subject matter. Your experience, where you go, where you want to go, however you think the work is propelling you through or implicating you in its experience or in its space is up to you. You can step in and walk out, you can go to another piece, but once you're in this room, you're in the volume of these pieces, and they either spin you out from one to the other or make a continuous movement throughout, but the subject matter of that experience is yours, so you're the content. And that's a shift in 20th century sculpture.
We'll come back to that, but if you looked at, as you said, torqued ellipses, and you come here, where is this going? Where are you headed?
Well, work comes out of work, and I think what happens is you work and work. Ideas of certain works that you want to resolve often lead to not only the solutions that you're attempting to get across, but sometimes they lead to different ideas. Now, if we take Band, for instance, that piece seems like it has a logical footprint, right. But if you walk it, the inside and outside becomes indistinguishable. I haven't made a piece like that before, so in a sense, that's a new template. It's not that one sets out to make a new template, and that piece took about 3.5, 4 years to get together. It's that one works on a problem, then the problem leads to solutions in some works, and then there are other ideas that are self-evident in the solution of some works that lead to other works. But there's no great aha movement. There's no...
But there's this aha. As you do these things, just take the 3 new works.
Yeah.
You must have saw something in the creation of those works that is pointing you somewhere else.
Well, what I thought about primarily was I had this room to deal with, and I wanted to make 3 works that afforded an experience that was different in kind, one from the other.
From each other or from previous works?
From previous work, and different in kind from each other. Not qualitatively different from each other, but different in kind. And the first piece, Sequence, really deals with its internal passages, and it deals with its vertical elevation, and it deals with directionality. After a point, and you just walked it, you become confused about whether you've not been in the same place before, or whether you're turning back on yourself, and then you arrive at an exit and you think, this isn't where I thought I was going to be. So the piece takes you internally through its path in a relationship to your own movement where, because there's no vertical to adjust in terms of your own body's axis, you become very, very confused in relation to the curvature that you're following, and you're continually involved with the sculpture as it's propelling you. You're implicated in its movement as you move. The second piece here is a torque torus inversion. Now, a torque torus is different than a torqued ellipse. A torus is like the ring on your finger, or better yet, think of a bicycle wheel. And if you think of a bicycle wheel, the rim of a bicycle wheel, where the tube is, where the tube of the bicycle wheel is, you have a concavity. If you take that bicycle wheel and you say it's very large, and you step inside, in the inside of the bicycle rim is a convexity. Now we take this bicycle wheel, that's a circle, and we pull it. Right. So it's an elliptical form.
Right.
Then, this is the part you have to follow. Then you take the top edge of this bicycle rim,
right,
like this, and you turn it to the bottom edge.
Right.
Now you have a form that where the bottom of the bicycle rim is an ellipse and the top of the bicycle rim is an ellipse, but it's turned at a right angle to itself, and it's not a torqued ellipse, it's a torqued torus, like the inside ring of your finger, which means it's moving not only this way, but this way as it goes around. That's what this form is. And there's two of them, and one of them is going out, and the other one's turned upside down. What they do, unlike the first piece that's just involved with circulation, is they center you. And when you walk inside, you almost can touch their volume. They compress the space, even though they're quite large, where you can feel your relationship to the physical space. They make the space almost palpable.
You have said previously that you do not start off with a specific intention. Yes?
Yes.
Meaning what? That you don't visualize what it's going to look like? Meaning what?
Meaning that I start off with a problem, and I start off how...
A problem is a room, a size, a site?
A site, or inside,
right,
urban site, whatever the context
right,
is. Then I have a certain vocabulary that I'm dealing with. And then what I want to do is extend that vocabulary in terms of invention. So the site dictates probably the scale,
right,
and the problems that I'm involved with dictate if I can invent a form or not. But you know, work comes out of work. It's not like all of a sudden you sit down and you think, oh, there's a new form. Yeah. These pieces took about 3.5 or 4 years to make work significantly different than the last big show, which was in Bilbao.
Okay. How did it change, though? When you began to do these pieces, these new pieces, did they change as you did that 3 years of work? I mean, did they start somewhere and become something else that you didn't believe or know or imagine from the beginning?
You don't know until you build them in the steel mill, whatever you're up to. You have no idea. You build models.
So material dictates?
I think matter itself imposes form on form.